Hey, hey, you know what time it is. Get into it! Get into it! Yes! We are back with Storytime with Chris for a very, very special presentation. So, as I've been talking about earlier this week, I'm gonna back the camera up just a tad, excuse me. Oh, that's a lot better. Okay. So, I've been talking about this all week. Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree is one of my favorite books of all time, one of my favorite Halloween themed stories. And I've read this book before. I read it last year, and I'm pretty sure the year before that. But now I'm going to be able to record it and be able to upload it to the YouTube channel so we can just have it for in perpetuity. There we go. Well, no. For forever, for all time. There you go. Um, I hope everybody's having a good day. I'm sorry if I seem a little out of it because I went to the Renaissance Fair, the Ohio Renaissance Festival today for the very first time. Shout out to my friend Carlo, and all of the staff that worked there. I was able to get some complimentary passes and I had an amazing time. I really did, y'all. Like, I dressed up. If anybody has seen my cosplay for my Kurosaki Ichigo Bankai cosplay for Bleach, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I had a great time. Food was great. Got to get a couple of trinkets to take home, some good crystals, and I just had a great time. Everybody was super cool, very much in character. There were so many different shows and feats of arms and bands playing and choruses. Everybody was dressed up from every walk of science fiction and fantasy, whether it's anime, whether it's medieval, whether it's 15th century, 17th century, it goes on. And there was so much to explore and have fun with. So shout out to my friends. We are called the Purple Wombat Group, and I am a new member. Not new to the friend group, but new to this group that continuously goes to the Renaissance Fair every year. So I will do my best to make it a tradition to go every year myself. So yeah, get yourself a good snack because this is going to be a longer reading of Storytime with Chris, which I don't own the music that you are listening to in the background, which is brought to you by none other than Mr. Ambiance. They always have some great stuff, and they got some ambient music playing that really is striking the mood for me. So get yourself a good snack. I'm gonna run and get some chapstick real quick, and I'll be right back and we'll get started, okay? I will be right back, okay? All right. Ooh, my leg. Okay. My leg. Alrighty, I am back. Okay. Alright. Let me get my headphones on. So, for all of my 90s kids out there, you more than likely have seen Hanna-Barbera's production of The Halloween Tree. It was a made-for-TV movie, and it got a cult following and was on VHS and DVD. It still gets distributed because it's that popular of a movie, because it's just so fun. It's really fun. It is a very 90s movie. I can explain what that is at another time, but it is an unapologetically 90s kid adventure with a lot of heart to it, and we're going to find out how that translates in this novel. So, like I said, get yourself a snack, relax, and we will begin. Oh, yep, you know I have to have my tea. And yes, there are illustrations in this, and I'll do my best to show them to you. Which, if you can see this illustration, that is Mr. Moundshroud. He is our guide and overhanging narrator for this story, practically. Oh, hold on one second. There we go. We need no interruptions. Alright. The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. Chapter 1. It was a small town by a small river and a small lake in a small northern part of a Midwest state. There wasn't so much wilderness around you, you couldn't see the town, but on the other hand, there wasn't so much town, you could see and feel and touch and smell the wilderness. The town was full of trees and dry grass and dead flowers now that autumn was here, and full of fences to walk on and sidewalks to skate on and a large ravine to tumble in and yell across. And the town was full of boys. And it was the afternoon of Halloween, and all the houses shut against a cold wind, and the town full of cold sunlight. But suddenly the day was gone. Night came out from under each tree and spread. Behind the doors of all the houses there was a scurrying of mouse feet, muted cries, and flickerings of light. Behind one door, Tom Skelton, age 13, stopped and listened. The wind outside nested in each tree, prowled the sidewalks in invisible threads like unseen cats. Tom Skelton shivered. Anyone could see that the wind was a special wind tonight, and the darkness took on a special feel because it was All Hallows' Eve. Everything seemed cut from soft black velvet or gold or orange velvet. Smoke panted up out of 1,000 chimneys like the plumes of funeral parades. From kitchen windows drifted 2 pumpkin smells, gourds being cut, pies being baked. The cries behind the locked house doors grew more exasperated as shadows of boys flew by windows. Half-dressed boys, grease paint on their cheeks, here a hunchback, there a medium-sized giant. Ant attics were still being rummaged, old locks broken, old steamer chests disemboweled for costumes. Tom Skelton put on his bones. He grinned at the spinal cord, the ribcage, the kneecaps, stitched white on black cotton. Lucky, he thought. What a name you got, Tom Skelton. Great for Halloween. Everyone calls you Skeleton. So, what do you wear? Bones. Wham! 8 front doors banged shut. 8 boys made a series of beautiful leaps over flower pots, rails, dead ferns, bushes, landing on their own dry-starched front lawns, galloping, rushing. They seized a Fido sheet, adjusted a lost mask, tugged at strange mushroom caps or wigs, shouting at the wind the way the wind took them along, helping their running, glad of the wind or cursing boy curses as masks fell off or hung sideways or stuffed up their noses like a muslin smell, like a dog's hot breath, or just letting the sheer exhilaration of being alive and out on this night pull their lungs and shape their throats into a yell and a yell and a yell. 8 boys collided at one intersection. Here I am. Which? Ape Man. Skeleton, said Tom, hilarious inside his bones. Gargoyle. Beggar. Mr. Death himself. Bang! They shook back from their concussions, all happy-fouled and tangled under a street-corner lamp. The swaying electric lamp belled in the wind like a cathedral bell. The bricks of the street became planks of a drunken ship, all tilted and foundered with dark and light. Behind each mask was a boy. "Who's that?" Tom Skelton pointed. "Won't tell. Secret," cried the witch, disguising his voice. Everyone laughed. "Who's that?" "Mummy," cried the boy inside the ancient yellow wrappings like an immense cigar stalking the night streets. "And who's—" "No time," said someone hidden behind yet another mystery of muslin and paint. "Trick or treat!" "Yeah!" Shrieking and wailing, full of banshee mirth, they ran on everything except sidewalks, going up into the air over bushes and down almost upon yipping dogs. But in the middle of running, laughing, barking, suddenly, as if a great hand of night and wind and smelling something wrong stopped them, they stopped. 6, 7, 8... That can't be. Count again. 4, 5, 6. Should be 9 of us. Someone's missing. They sniffed each other like fearful beasts. Pipkin's not here. How did they know? They were all hidden behind masks, and yet, they could feel his absence. Pipkin. He's never missed a Halloween in a zillion years. Boy, this is awful. Come on. In one vast swerve, one dog-like trot and ramble, they circled round and down the middle of the cobble-brick street, blown like leaves before a storm. "Here's his place." They pulled to a halt. There was Pipkin's house, but not enough pumpkins in the windows, not enough corn shucks in the porch, not enough spooks peering out through the dark glass in the high upstairs tower room. "Gosh," said someone, "what if Pipkin's sick?" "It wouldn't be Halloween without Pipkin." "Not Halloween," they moaned, and someone threw a crabapple at Pipkin's front door. It made a small, like a rabbit kicking the door. They waited, sad for no reason, lost for no reason. They thought of Pipkin and a Halloween that might be a rotten pumpkin with a dead candle if Pipkin wasn't there. "Come on, Pipkin, come out and save the night." Chapter 2. Why were they waiting, afraid for one small boy? Because Joe Pipkin was the greatest boy who had ever lived, the finest boy who had ever raced around the track, winning, and then seeing his friends a mile back somewhere stumbled and fell, waiting for them to catch up and join, breast and breast, breaking the winner's tape. The jolliest boy who had ever hunted out all the hot houses in town, which are hard to find, and come back to report on them and take all the kids to ramble through the basements and scramble up the ivy outside bricks and shout down the chimneys and make water off the roofs, hooting and chimpanzee dancing and ape bellowing. The day Joe Pipkin was born, all the orange crush and Nahi soda bottles in the world fizzed over, and joyful bees swarmed countrysides to sting maiden ladies. On his birthdays, the lake pulled out from the shore in midsummer and ran back with a tidal wave of boys, a big leap of bodies, and a down crash of laughs. Dawns, lying in bed, you heard a bird peck at the window. Pipkin. You stuck your head out into the snow-water clear summer morning air. There, in the dew on the lawn, rabbit prints showed where, just a moment ago, not a dozen rabbits, but one rabbit had circled and crisscrossed in a glory of life and exultation. Bounding hedges, clipping ferns, tromping clover, it resembled the switchyards down at the rail depot. A million tracks in the grass, but no Pipkin. And here he rose up like a wild sunflower in the garden. His great round face burned with fresh sun. His eyes flashed Morse code signals. Hurry up, it's almost over. What? Today, now, 6 a.m., dive down, wade in it, or this summer, before you know, bang, it's gone. Quick. And he sank away in sunflowers to come up all onions. Pipkin, oh dear Pipkin, finest and loveliest of boys. How he ran so fast no one knew. His tiny shoes were ancient. They were colored green, a forest jogged through, brown from old harvest, trudges through September a year back, tar-stained from sprints along the docks and beaches where the coal barges came in, yellow from careless dogs, splintered filled from climbing wood fences. His clothes were scarecrow clothes, worn by Pipkin's dogs all night, loaned to them for strolls through town, with chew marks along the cuffs and fall marks on the seat. His hair? His hair was a great hedgehog bristle of bright brown blonde daggers sticking in all directions, his eyes pure peach fuzz, his hands mittened with dust and the good smell of Airedales and peppermint and stolen peaches from the far country orchards. Pipkin, an assemblage of speed, smells, textures, a cross-section of all the boys who ever ran, fell, got up, and ran again. No one in all the years had ever seen him sitting still. He was hard to remember in school. In one seat for 1 hour, he was the last into the schoolhouse, and the first exploded out when the bell ended the day. Pipkin, sweet Pipkin, who yodeled and played the kazoo and hated girls more than all the other boys in the gang combined. Pipkin, whose arm around your shoulder in secret whisper of great doings this day protected you from the world. Pipkin. God got up early just to see Pipkin come out of his house like one of those people on a weather clock, and the weather was always fine where Pipkin was. Pipkin. They stood in front of his house. Any moment now, the door would open wide. Pipkin would jump out in a blast of fire and smoke, and Halloween would really begin. Come on, Joe. Oh, Pipkin, they whispered. Come on. That's how you know you're loved. And I don't know how they do it in other areas, but comment below like what it was like where you grew up, how Halloween was done, because I definitely remember so many different occasions having Halloween growing up in Cleveland. It was just always a fantastic time. Everybody was having a good time. All the doors were passing out candy. Every neighborhood street you would go to, everybody's dressed up and just having a fantastic time. There is nothing like a Midwestern Halloween. There is none. Cornfield mazes, haystack rides, haunted houses, haunted trails, you name it. Chapter 3. The front door opened. Pipkin stepped out. Not flew, not banged, not exploded. Stepped out. And came down the walk to meet his friends. Not running and not wearing a mask. No mask. But moving along like an old man almost. Pipkin! They shouted to scare away their uneasiness. Hi, gang, said Pipkin. His face was pale. He tried to smile, but his eyes looked funny. He was holding his right side with one hand as if he had a boil there. They all looked at his hand. He took his hand away from his side. Well, he he said with faint enthusiasm. "We ready to go?" "Yeah, but you don't look ready," said Tom. "You sick?" "On Halloween?" said Pipkin. "You kidding? Where's your costume?" "You go on ahead. I'll catch up." "No, Pipkin, we'll wait for you to—" "Go on," said Pipkin, saying it slowly. His face deathly pale. His hand was back on his stomach. "You got a stomachache?" asked Tom. "You told your folks?" "No, I can't. They'd—" Tears burst from Pipkin's eyes. "It's nothing, I tell you. Look, go straight on toward the ravine. Head for the house, okay? The place of the haunts, yeah? Meet you there." "You swear?" "Swear. Wait till you see my costume." The boys began to back off. On the way, they touched his elbow or knocked him gently in the chest or ran their knuckles along his chin in a fake fight. "Okay, Pipkin, as long as you're sure." "I'm sure." He took his hand away from his side. His face colored for a moment as if the pain were gone. "On your marks, get set, go!" When Joe Pipkin said go, they went. They ran. They ran backyard halfway down the block so they could see Pipkin standing there waving at them. "Hurry up, Pipkin!" "I'll catch you," he shouted a long way off. The night swallowed him. They ran. When they looked back again, he was gone. They banged doors. They shouted trick or treat, and their brown paper bags began to fill with incredible sweets. They galloped with their teeth glued shut with pink gum. They ran with red wax lips bedazzling their faces. But all the people who met them at doors looked like candy factory duplicates of their own mothers and fathers. It was like never leaving home. Too much kindness flashed from every window and every portal. What they wanted was to hear dragons belch in basements and bang castle doors. And so, still looking back for Pipkin, they reached the edge of town and the place where civilization fell away in darkness. The ravine. The ravine filled with varieties of night sounds, lurkings of black ink stream and creek, lingerings of autumns that rolled over in fire and bronze and died 1,000 years ago. From this deep sprang mushroom and toadstool and cold stone frog and crawdad and spider. There was a long tunnel down there under the earth in which poisoned waters dripped, and the echoes never ceased calling, "Come, come, come, and if you do, you'll stay forever, forever, drip, forever, rustle, run, rush, whisper, and never go, go, go." The boys lined up on the rim of darkness looking down. And then Tom Skelton, cold in his bones, whistled his breath in his teeth like the wind blowing over the bedroom screen at the night. He pointed. "Oh, hey, that's where Pipkin told us to go." He vanished. All looked. They saw his small shape race down the dirt path into 100 million tons of night, all crammed in that huge, dark pent, that dank cellar, that deliciously frightening ravine. Yelling, they plunged after. Where they had been was empty. The town was left behind to suffer itself with sweetness. Chapter 4. They ran down the ravine at a swift rush, all laughing, jostling, all elbows and ankles, all steamy snort and rust about. To stop in collision with Tom Skelton stopped and pointed up the path. "There," he whispered. "There's the only house in town worth visiting on Halloween. There." "Yeah," said everyone, for it was true. The house was special and fine and tall and dark. There must have been 1,000 windows in its sides, all shimmering with cold stars. It looked as if it had been cut out of black marble instead of built out of timbers, and inside, who could guess how many rooms, halls, breezeways, attics, superior and inferior attics, some higher than others, some more filled with dust and webs and ancient leaves or gold buried above ground in the sky, but lost away so high no ladder in town could take you there. The house beckoned with its towers, invited with its gummed shut doors. Pirate ships are a tonic, ancient forts are a boon, but a house? A haunted house. On All Hallows' Eve, 8 small hearts beat up an absolute storm of glory and approbation. Come on! But they were already crowding up the path until they stood at last by a crumbling wall, looking up and still farther up at the great tomb-yard top of the old house, for that's what it seemed. The high mountain peak of the mansion was littered with what looked like black bones or iron rods, and enough chimneys to choke out smoke signals from 3 dozen fires on sooty hearths hidden far below in the deep bowels of this monster place. With so many chimneys, the roof seemed a vast cemetery, each chimney signifying the burial place of some old god of fire or enchantress of steam, smoke, and firefly spark. Even as they watched, a kind of bleak exhalation of soot breathed out of some 4 dozen flues, darkening the sky still more and putting out some stars. "Boy," said Tom Skelton, "Pipkin sure knows what he's talking about." "Boy," said all, agreeing. They crept along a weed-infested path toward the crumpled front porch. Tom Skelton, alone, itched his bony foot up on the first porch step. The others gasped at his bravery. So now, following in a mob, a compact mass of sweating boys moved up on the porch amid fierce cries of the planks underfoot and shudderings of their bodies. Each wished to pull back, swivel about, run, but found himself trapped against the boy behind, or in front, or to the side. So with a pseudopod thrust out here or there, the amoebic form, the large perspiration of boys, leaned and made a run and a stop to the front door of the house, which was tall as a coffin and twice as thin. They stood there for a long moment, various hands reaching out like the legs of an immense spider, as if to twist that cold knob or reach up from the knocker on that front door. Meanwhile, the wooden floorings of the porch sank and wallowed beneath their weight, threatening at every shift of proportion to give away and fling them into some cockroach abyss beneath. The planks, as heavy shoes scraped on them, and each tuned to an A or an F or a C, sang out their uncanny music, and if there had been time, and if it were noon, they might have danced on a cadaver's tune or a skeleton's rigadoon. For who can resist an ancient porch which, like a gigantic xylophone, only wants to be jumped on to make music? But they were not thinking this. Henry Hank Smith, for that's who it was, hidden inside his Black Witch's costume, cried, "Look!" And all looked at the knocker on the door. Tom's hand trembled out to touch it. "A Marley knocker!" "What?" "You know, Scrooge and Marley. A Christmas Carol," whispered Tom. And indeed the face that made up the knocker on the door was the face of a man with a dread toothache, his jaw bandaged, his hair askew, his teeth prolapsed, his eyes wild. Dead as a doornail, Marley, Fred to Scrooge, inhabitants of lands beyond the grave, doomed to wander this earth forever until... "Knock," said Henry Hank. Tom Skelton took hold of old Marley's cold, grisly jaw, lifted it, and let it fall. All jumped at the concussion. The entire house shook, its bones ground together, shades snapped furled up so that windows blinked wide their ghastly eyes. Tom Skelton cat-leaped to the porch rail, staring up. On the rooftop, weird weather birds spun, 2-headed roosters whirled in the sneezed wind. A gargoyle on the western rim of the house erupted 2 snorts of rain-funneled dust, and down the long, snaking serpentine rain spouts of the house, after the sneeze had died and the weathercocks ceased spinning, vagrant wisps of autumn leaf and cobweb fell gusting out onto the dark grass. Tom whirled to look at the faintly shuddering windows, moonlight reflections trembling in the glass like schools of disturbed silver minnows. Then the front door gave a shake, a twist of the knob, and a grimace of its Marley knocker, and flung itself wide. The wind made by the suddenly opening door almost knocked the boys off the porch. They seized one another's elbows, yelling. Then the darkness within the house inhaled. A wind sucked through the gaping door. It pulled at the boys, dragging them across the porch. They had to lean back so as not to be snatched into the deep, dark hall. They struggled, shouted, clutched the porch rails. But then the wind ceased. Darkness moved within the darkness. Inside the house, a long way off, someone was walking toward the door. Whoever it was must have been dressed all in black, for they could see nothing but a pale white face drifting on the air. An evil smile came and hung in the doorway before them. Behind the smile, the tall man hid in shadow. They could see his eyes now, small pinpoints of green fire in little charred pits of sockets looking out at them. "Well," said Tom, trick or treat?"
"Trick?"
said the smile in the dark.
"Treat?"
"Yes, sir." The wind played a flute in a chimney somewhere, an old song about time and dark and far places. The tall man shut up his smile like a bright pocket knife.
"No tricks," he said. "Only trick."
"No treats, only trick." The door slammed. The house thundered with showers of dust. Dust puffed out the rain spout again in fluffs like an emergence of downy cats. Dust gasped from open windows. Dust snorted from the porch boards under their feet. The boys stared at the locked, shut-fast front door. The Marley knocker was not scowling now, but smiling an evil smile. "What's he mean?" asked Tom. "No treats, only trick?" Backing off around the side of the house, they were astonished at the sounds it made. A whole rigmarole of whispers, squeaks, creaks, wails, and murmurs, and the night wind was careful to let the boys hear them all. With every step they took, the great house leaned after them with soft groans. They rounded the far side of the house and stopped, for there was the tree. And it was such a tree as they had never seen in all their lives. It stood in the middle of a vast yard behind the terribly strange house, and this tree rose up some 100 feet in the air, taller than the high roofs, and full and round and well-branched and covered all over with rich assortments of red and brown and yellow autumn leaves. "But," whispered Tom, "oh, look! What's up in there?" For the tree was hung with a variety of pumpkins of every shape and size, and a number of tints and hues of smoky yellow or bright orange. "A pumpkin tree," someone said. "No," said Tom. The wind blew among the high branches and tossed their bright burdens softly. "A Halloween tree," said Tom. And he was right. That is the tree. There's the house and the Halloween tree. Excuse me. Pretty spooky, huh? Chapter 5. The pumpkins on the tree were not mere pumpkins. Each had a face sliced in it. Each face was different. Every eye was a stranger eye. Every nose was a weirder nose. Every mouth smiled hideously in some new way. There must have been 1,000 pumpkins on this tree, hung high on every branch, 1,000 smiles, 1,000 grimaces, and twice times 1,000 glares and winks and blinks and leerings of fresh-cut eyes. And as the boys watched, a new thing happened. The pumpkins began to come alive. One by one, starting at the bottom of the tree, in the nearest pumpkins, candles took fire within the raw interiors. This one, and then that, and this, and then still another, and on up and around. 3 pumpkins here, 7 pumpkins still higher. A dozen clustered beyond, 100, 500, 1,000 pumpkins slit their candles, which as to say brightened up their faces, showed fire in their square or round or curiously slanted eyes, flame gutted in their toothed mouths. Sparks leapt out their ripe-cut ears, and from somewhere 2 voices, 3 or maybe 4 voices, whispered and chanted a kind of sing-song or old sea shanty of the sky and time and the earth turning over into sleep, the rain splouts blue spider dust. "It's big, it's broad," a voice smoked from the rooftop chimney. "It's broad, it's bright, it fills the sky of All Hallows Night." From open window somewhere cobwebs drifted. "The strangest sight you've ever seen, the monster tree on Halloween." The candles flickered and flared. The wind crooned in, the wind crooned out, the pumpkin mouths tuning the song. "The leaves have burned to gold and red, the grass is brown, the old year dead. But hang the harvest high, oh see the candle constellations on the Halloween tree." Tom felt his mouth stir like a small mouse wanting to sing. The stars they turn, the candles burn, the mouse leaves scurry on the cold wind borne. A mob of smiles shine down on thee from the gourds hung high on the Halloween tree. The smile of the witch and the smile of the cat, the smile of the beast, the smile of a rat, the smile of the reaper taking his fee, all cut and glimmer on the Halloween tree. Smoke seemed to sift from Tom's mouth. "Halloween tree." All the boys whispered it. "Halloween tree." And then there was silence. And during the silence, the last of the triples and quadruples of All Hallow Tree candles were lit in titanic constellations, woven up through the black branches and peeking down through the twigs and crisp leaves. And the tree had now become one vast substantial smile. The last of the pumpkins now were lit. The air around the tree was Indian summer breathing warm. The tree exhaled sooty smoke and raw pumpkin smell upon them. "Gosh," said Tom Skelton. "But what kind of place is this?" asked Henry Hegg the witch. "I mean, first the house, that man and no treats, only tricks, and now I've never saw a tree like this in my life. Like a Christmas tree, only bigger, and all those candles and pumpkins. What's it mean? What's it celebrate?"
Celebrate!
A vast voice whispered somewhere, perhaps in a chimney's soot bellows, or perhaps all the windows of the house opened like mouths at the same moment behind them, sliding up, sliding down, announcing the word "Celebrate," with breathings out of darkness. "Yes," said the gigantic whisper which trembled the candles in the pumpkins. "Celebration." The boys leaped around, but the house was still. The windows were closed and brimmed with pools of moonlight. "Last one's in's an old maid," cried Tom suddenly, "and a bond of leaves soon waiting like old fires, old gold." And the boys ran and dived at the huge lovely pile of autumn treasure. And in the moment of diving, about to vanish beneath the leaves in crisp swarms, yellings, shouting, shoving, falling, there was an immense gulp of breath, a seizing in of air. The boys yelped, pulled back as if an invisible whip had struck them. For coming out of the pile of leaves was a bony white hand all by itself, and following it, all smiles, and in one moment, but now revealed as if slid upward, was a white skull. And what had been a delicious pool of oak and elm and poplar leaves to thrash and sink and hide in, now became the last place in all this world the boys wanted to be, for the white bony hand was flying on the air, and the white skull rose to hover before them. The boys fell back colliding, sneezing out their air in panics, until one wild mass they flew flat upon the earth and writhed and tore at the grass to fight free, scramble, and try to run. "Help!" they cried. "Oh, yes, help," said the skull. Then peal after peal of laughter froze them further, as the hand upon the air, the bony skeleton hand, reached up, took hold of the white skull face, and peeled it down and off. The boys blinked once behind their masks. Their jaws dropped, though none could see them dropping. The huge man in dark clothes soared up out of the leaves, taller and yet taller. He grew like a tree. He put out branches that were hands. He stood framed against the Halloween tree itself, his outstretched arms and long white bony fingers festooned with large orange globes of fire and burning smiles. His eyes were pressed tight as he roared his laughter. His mouth gaped wide to let an autumn wind rush out.
No treats, boys, no, not treat. Tricks, boys, trick, trick.
They lay there waiting for the earthquake to come. And it came. The tall man's laughter took hold of the ground and gave it a shake. This tremor passed through their bones, came out their mouths, and it came out in the form of still more laughter. They sat up amid the ruins of the thrashed about leaf pile, surprised. They put their hands to their masks to feel the hot air leaping out in small gusts of echoing mirth. Then they looked at the man, up at the man, as if to verify their surprise.
Yes, boys, that was a trick. You'd forgotten. No, you never knew.
And he leaned against the tree, finishing out his fits of happiness. He leaned against the tree, finishing out his fits of happiness, shaking the trunk, making the 1,000 pumpkins shiver, and the fires inside to smoke and dance. Warmed by their laughter, the boys got up to feel their bones and see if anything was broken. Nothing was. They stood in a small mob under the Halloween tree, waiting, for they knew this was only the beginning of something new and special and grand and fine. Excuse me. "Well," said Tom Skelton.
Well,
Said the man. "Tom?" cried everyone else. "Is that you?" Tom and the skeleton mask stiffened. "Or is it Bob or Fred?"
no. No, that must be Ralph, said the man quickly.
"All of those," sighed Tom, clapping his mask hard in place, relieved. "Yeah, all," said everyone. The man nodded, smiling.
Well, now you know something about Halloween you never knew before. How did you like my trick?"
Trick, yes, trick. The boys were catching fire with the idea. It made all the good glue go out of their joints and put a little dust of sin in their blood. They felt it stir around until it pumped on up to light their eyes and stretch their lips to show their happy dog teeth. "Yeah, sure." "Is that what you used to do on Halloween?" asked the witch boy.
This and more, but let me introduce myself, beg your pardon. Mountroud is the name. Carapace clavicle Mountroud. Does that have a ring, boys? Does it sound for you?
It sounds, the boys thought. Oh, it sounds...
Mountroud. A fine name, said Mr. Mountroud, giving a full, sepulchral night church sound. And a fine night, and all the deep, dark, wild, long histories of Halloween waiting to swallow us whole.
Swallow us?
Yes, cried Mountroud. Lads, look at yourselves. Why are you, boy, wearing that skull face? And you, boy, carrying a scythe? And you, lad, made up like a witch? And you? He thrust his bony finger at each mask. You don't know, do you? You just put on those faces and old mothball clothes and jump out, but you don't really know, do you?
Well, said Tom, a mouse behind his skull-white muslin. No. Yeah, said the devil boy. Come to think of it, why am I wearing this? He fingered his red cloak and sharp rubber horns and lovely pitchfork. And me! This, said the ghost, trailing its long white graveyard sheets, and all the boys given to wonder and touch their own costumes and refit their own masks.
Then wouldn't it be fun to find out? Asked Mr. Mountrout. I'll tell you. No, I'll show you. If only there was time.
It's only 6:30. Halloween hasn't even begun, said Tom in his cold bones.
True, said Mr. Mountrout. All right, lads, come along.
He strode. They ran. At the end of the deep, dark night ravine, he pointed over the rim of the hills and the earth, and away from the light of the moon under the dim light of strange stars. The wind fluttered his black cloak, and the hood that half shadowed and now half revealed his almost fleshless face.
There, do you see it, lads?
What?
The undiscovered country, out there. Look long, look deep, make a feast. The past, boys, the past. Oh, it's dark, yes, and full of nightmare. Everything that Halloween ever was lies buried there. Will you dig for bones, boys? Do you have the stuff?
He burned his gaze at them.
What is Halloween? How did it start? Where? Why? What for? Witches, cats, mummy dust, haunts, it's all there in that country for which no one returns. Will you dive into the dark ocean, boys? Will you fly into the night sky?
The boys swallowed hard. Someone peeped. We'd like to, but Pipkin. We gotta wait for Pipkin. Yeah, Pipkin sent us to your place. We couldn't go without him. As if summoned in this instant, they heard a cry from the far side of the ravine. Hey, here I am, cried a frail voice. They saw his small figure standing with the lit pumpkin on the far ravine ledge. This way, they all yelled. Pipkin, quick! Coming, was the cry. I don't feel so good, but I had to come. Wait for me. Chapter 6. They saw his small figure run down the middle of the ravine on the path. Oh, wait, please wait. The voice began to fail. I don't feel well. I can't run. Can't. Pipkin! Everyone shouted, waving from the edge of the cliff. His figure was small. There were shadows mixed everywhere. Bats flew, owls shrieked, night ravens clustered like black leaves in trees. The small boy running with his lit pumpkin fell. Oh, gasped Mountrout. The pumpkin light went out. Oh, gasped everyone. Light your pumpkin, Pipkin! Light it! Shrieked Tom. He thought he saw the small figure scrambling in the dark. Grass below, trying to strike a light, but in the instant of darkness the night swept in, a great wing folded over the abyss. Many owls hooted. Many mice scampered and slithered in the shadows. A million tiny murders happened somewhere. Light your pumpkin, Pip! Help! Wailed his sad voice. 1,000 wings flew away. A great beast beat the air somewhere like a thumping drum. The clouds, like gauzy scenes, were pulled away to set a clean sky. The moon was there, a great eye. It looked down upon an empty path. Pipkin was nowhere to be seen. Way off toward the horizon, something dark frittered and danced and slithered away in the cold star air. Help! Help! Wailed a fading voice. Then it was gone.
Oh? Mourned Mr. Mousetrap. Oh, this is bad. I fear something has taken him away.
Where? Gibbered the boys, cold.
To the undiscovered country, the place I wanted to show you, but now...
You don't mean that thing in the ravine, or him, or whatever that something was. Death? Did he grab Pipkin and run?
Borrowed is more like. Perhaps it hold him for ransom, said Mountron.
Can Death do that?
Sometimes, yes.
Oh, gosh. Tom felt his eyes water. Pip, tonight, running slow, so pale. Pip, you shouldn't have come out. He shouted at the sky, but there was only wind there and white clouds floating like old spirit fluff in a clear river of wind. They stood cold, shivering. They looked off to where the dark something had stolen their friend.
So, said Mountrout, all the more reason for you to come along, lads. If we fly fast, maybe we can catch Pipkin, grab his sweet Halloween corn candy soul, bring him back, pop him in bed, toast him warm, save his breath. What say, lads? Will you solve 2 mysteries in one? Search and seek for lost Pipkin, and solve Halloween all in one fell dark's blow?
They thought of All Hallows Night and the billion ghosts a-wandering the lonely lanes and cold winds and strange smokes. They thought of Pipkin. No more than a thimbleful of boy in sheer summer delight, torn out like a tooth and carried off on a black tide of web and horn and black soot. And almost as one, they murmured, "Yes." Moundshound sprang, he ran, he pummeled, he pushed, he raved.
Quick now, along this path, up this rise, along this road, the abandoned farm, over the fence, alley-oop.
They leapt the fence, running, and stood by a barn that was frosted over with old circus posters, with banners tattered by wind, pasted there 30, 40, 50 years back. Circuses passing through had left patches and swatches of themselves 10 inches thick.
A kite, boys! Build a kite, quick!
Now what do you suppose took Pipkin away? Because as you can see in the illustration, it was this dark shadow that just grabbed him and snatched him away. Told you, this story it's top tier spooky. It's top tier spooky. Chapter 7. No sooner had he cried this than Mr. Mountrout ripped a great tissue from the side of the barn. It fluttered in his hands, the eye of a tiger, another rip from another ancient poster, and the mouth of a lion. The boys heard roars of Africa down the wind. Oh, okay, cool. I was making sure we were going to see that illustration. They blinked, they ran, they scratched with fingernails, they plucked with hands, they seized off strips and patches and huge rolls of animal flesh, of fang and piercing eye, of one wounded flank, of blood-red claw, of tail, of bound and leap and cry. The whole side of the barn was an ancient parade stopped dead. They tore it asunder, and with each tear they pulled off talon, tongue, or ravening feline eye. Beneath waited layer upon layer of jungle nightmare, delicious encounters with polar bears, panicked zebra, million prides of lions, charging rhinos, clambering gorillas, which pawed up the side of midnight and swung toward dawn. 1,000 animals in congregation rumbled to be set free, now free in fists and hands and fingers, whistling on the autumn wind. The boys raced off across the grass. Now Mountrout knocked down old fence railing beams and made a rough kite cross and bound them with wire, then stood back to receive the gifts of kite paper as the boys flung them in fistfuls, and these tossed in place upon the frame and spark flinting fused with burnings of his thorny hands. "Hey!" the boys cried their delight. "Oh, look! They had never seen such things, or known that men such as Mountroud, with a pinch, a clutch, a pressure of fingers, might blend an eye with tooth, a tooth with mouth, a mouth with feline bobcat tail, all mingled beautifully into a single thing, a wild jigsaw puzzle, jungle zoo, billowed and trapped, pasted and tied, growing, taking color and sound and pattern in the light of the ascending moon. Now another cannibal eye, now another hungry maw, a mad chimpanzee, a most insane mandrill ape, a screaming butcher bird. The boys ran up with the last frights handed over, and the kite finished, the ancient flesh laid out, fused by the still blue smoke, burning thorny hands. Mr. Mountrout lit a cigar with the last bit of fire that sparked out of his thumb and smiled. And then the light from his smile showed the kite for what it was. A kite of destructions, of animals so dire and fierce their outcry drowned the wind and murdered the heart. He was pleased. The boys were pleased. For the kite somehow seemed to resemble... "Why," said Tom astounded, "a pterodactyl." "A what?"
A pterodactyl, those ancient flying reptiles gone some billion years back and never seen again," replied Mr. Mountrout. "Well said, boy. Pterodactyl it seems, and is, and 'twill fly us downward to perdition, or Land's End, or some other fine-sounding place. But now, rope, twine, string, quick, filch, and carry."
They ran the rope off an old abandoned clothesline, strung between barn and abandoned farmhouse. A good 90 feet or more of rope they brought Mountrout, who snaked it through his fist until it smoked a most unholy smoke. He tied it to the middle of the vast kite, which flapped like a somehow lost and out-of-water manta ray upon this high, strange beach. It struggled with wind to live. It flapped and floundered on the heaves of tidal air, laid down on grass. Mountrout stood back, gave a jerk, and lo! The kite flew. It hung low upon the air at the end of its clothesline in a dumb brute groveling of wind, veering this way, dashing that, leaping up suddenly to confront them with a wall of eyes, a solid flesh of teeth, a storm of cries. "It won't rise, won't go straight. A tail, we need a tail." And as by instinct, Tom dived first and seized the kite by its bottom. He hung there, the kite steadied. It began to rise.
"Yes," cried the dark man. "Oh, lad, you are the one. Bright boy, you be the tail, and more and more."
Excuse me. And as the kite slowly ascended the cold river of swift flowing air, each boy in turn, seized with the whim, spurred by his wits, became more and yet more of the tail. There's the kite. There's the pterodactyl kite. And there's Tom. There's Tom right there in the end. Which is to say that Henry Hank, disguised as a witch, grabbed Tom's ankles, and now the kite had two boys for its magnificent tail. And Ralph Bigstrom, wound up in his mummy clothes, stumbling over his winding tape, smothering in his burial rags, shambled forward, jumped, and grabbed Henry Hank's ankles. So 3 boys hung now in a tail. "Wait, here I come!" cried Beggar, who under his dirt and rags was really Fred Fryer. He jumped, he caught. The kite ascended. The 4 boys making the tail yelled for more length. They got it when the boys dressed as an ape-man scrambled and grabbed ankles, followed by the boy dressed as Death with a scythe, who did dangerously likewise. "Hey, watch out for that scythe!" The scythe fell and lay in the grass with a lost smile, but the 2 boys hung down now from all the half-washed ankles, and the kite rose more, higher, higher, adding a boy and a boy and a boy, until with a yell and a shout 8 boys were down hung in a magnificent thrashing tail, the last 2 being Ghost, who who was truly George Smith, and Wally Babb, who had inspired, made himself to look like a gargoyle fallen off the top of a cathedral. The boys yelled with elation. The kite swooped and took off. "Hey!" Whoosh! The kite purred with 1,000 animal whispers. Whang! The kite rope strummed the wind. Hush! Said the entire thing, and the wind flew them high across the stars, leaving Mountrow to look up with awe at his contraption. His kite. His boys. "Wait!" he shouted. "Don't wait, come on!" the boys yelled. Moundshroud ran along the grass to seize the scythe. His cape fluttered, taking air, making wings, until he also, very simply, took off and soared. And that is where we're going to stop for tonight. There's only 19 chapters in this book, and I don't want to get through it super duper quickly. So, if you enjoyed that, I will see you tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. So tomorrow afternoon, we'll get through a good portion of the book, and then we'll finish in the late evening hours during Halloween night. Just gather round, now hallucinate about what goes on outside when it gets late. Late night, the ghosts and banshees will get together for their nightly jamborees. There's things with horns and sorcerer eyes, and some with fangs about this size, and some that are fat, and some that are thin, and some that don't wear their skin. I'm telling you, brother, it's a frightful sight to see what goes on Halloween night. I love you all, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.